You know what I like?
What?
Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland is pretty cool.
Oh, Your Majesty!
Yes, my dear.
Look, there he is now!
Huh? What? Who?
The Cheshire Cat!
Cat!
Cat! Cat!
Let it go, let it go. Oh, this is terrible. Help! Help!
Stop him!
Stop him! Catch him! Somebody help me!
No, not that Alice in Wonderland. Oh, you must mean this Alice in Wonderland.
There is a place like no place on earth. Some say to survive it, you need to be as mad as a hatter. Which luckily, I am.
No, not that one either. Then which one? This one.
It's killing me. Wonderland is destroyed. My mind is in ruins.
Forget it, Alice. Block that dream. Wake at the sound.
What?
Alice Madness Returns is the sequel to American McGee's Alice, a game that took the creative liberty of turning the world of Wonderland into a beautiful, living, fucking nightmare. And I love it. I actually haven't played the first game, which is a real shame, and I'll tell you more about that later, but the way that I discovered this game was during the time when, don't laugh at me when I say this, I watched PewDiePie's videos. Yes, there was indeed a time when I watched PewDiePie's videos. Anyway, I saw him play through a portion of the first level, and that was enough to get me really interested in the game. One day the game was on sale on Steam, and I took the chance, and I'm really glad that I did, because this game is now in the top 10 list of my favorite games. Alice is different from other games. You see, as much as I like Halo, Gears of War, God of War, and other similar titles, after I finish the games, there's no point in going back and playing them, with the exception of multiplayer, if the game has that. Once you've exhausted all the things there are to do in those games, there's really no point in jumping back in. But what makes Alice special is not the gameplay, it's the atmosphere, the world of Wonderland. It's a rich and detailed place that's beautifully designed. It's a living, breathing work of art. It's stuff like this that makes my top 10 list, which is why the BioShock series is also way up there. It also makes me laugh at the idea that there are people out there who don't see video games as an art form. If you ask me, video games are the ultimate art form, but that's a different topic for a different video. Now, the game isn't perfect, it has its flaws, and in this video I will talk about all the aspects of the game. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Now keep in mind that this is coming from a person who, before this game, was not a fan of Alice in Wonderland in any shape or form. I knew nothing about the story and therefore didn't understand a lot of what was going on or who the characters were and why they were important. The whole thing starts when Alice's house lights on fire, and while she managed to escape, her family didn't. This causes her to be struck with so much grief and anguish that she starts to go insane and hallucinate, seeing the fantastical visions of a make-believe world. Every aspect of this world is so depressing. Alice is mistreated by the people who are supposed to be her caretakers. Crime, alcoholism, and prostitution are rampant in the streets. Alice's pure-hearted Wonderland has now become corrupted into a nightmare. Grotesque sludge creatures with mechanical metal pipes that spew fire and black smoke, and creepy infantile doll faces are oozing their way into Wonderland and destroying it from the inside. The graphics are easily the best thing in this game. Keep in mind that I had to convert the video before editing it, and then I exported it, and then I uploaded it to YouTube, so the quality isn't going to look as good as if you actually play the game for yourself. This entire game runs on its graphics. If the gameplay was the same but the graphics weren't as good, then this game wouldn't stand out at all. I'm not saying that the gameplay is weak. The gameplay is really fun, but there's no gameplay mechanics that are really outstanding that you can't find in other games. You got your quick and heavy melee attacks, you got your light and heavy ranged weapons, you got your platforming, your puzzles, etc. But what does make the game stand out is the character of the game. Your melee weapons are not actual weapons, but instead a knife, a wooden horsey you use as a hammer, a pepper grinder that you use as a machine gun, and a teapot that shoots tea grenades. Yes, you heard me right. Those things pass for weapons in this game. It makes no sense, but that's the point. We're in freaking Wonderland. Nothing makes sense here. In a good way. It's over the top ridiculous. I mean, look at this place. Cows with wings, giant snails, talking invisible cats. This is a place I want to spend as much time as possible in. They put so much detail in every nook and cranny, and I want to find all the things there are to find. Even in the segments when you're walking around the streets of London, I just want to stare at the characters, listen to their conversations, watch them interact. It's a living, breathing world. The super beautiful and stylized graphics help paint many pictures of both horror or complete serenity. Mostly the graphics take a dark style, but I really wish that they showed more areas of Wonderland that weren't all fucked up. I really like the idea of the first and the second to the last level where you start out in what you would normally expect in Wonderland, and then changing it to a dark, screwed up version of that. I think it's a really nice contrast. The music in this game is ridiculously good, and it's not a common thing for me to pay attention to the music in the game at all, so for me to say that the music in the game is freaking awesome, you know that it has to be good. It ranges from serene, beautiful, creepy, dark, atmospheric to pounding and aggressive when the action picks up. I find it really cool when they incorporate things that were originally in the story and make it a gameplay mechanic like Alice's shrink ability, which lets you reach places you normally wouldn't be able to and also lets you see invisible objects. Each hidden area where you shrink to fit in is a keyhole, which is really cool. In another level, Alice eats a piece of cake and turns huge, like in the story, and you play as
Mega Alice.
And it's fucking badass and one of my favorite parts of the game. I'll talk more about this part later. There are a lot of sliding segments in this game and I'm not sure why. They're not bad, the only thing that annoys me about them is that it can be hard to avoid the piles of glue that burn you and take away way too much health, which makes any part right after the sliding segment more difficult than it should be. I don't know, it just seems kind of overused. The cat is really badass. As you play the game, there are opportunities where he can appear and tell you some kind of piece of advice, which usually doesn't really have to do anything with the actual game. But anytime that I can listen to that sweet, buttery-ass voice is a good time.
I've not come back here looking for a fight.
Really? That's a pity. One's certainly looking for you. You're sufficiently fortified to kick some to boot these creatures' nether regions.
Which, now that I think of it, maybe it would have helped if sometimes he acted like a Navi, telling you about weak spots and enemies, because something that I found frustrating in the game was when the enemies had a very specific way of defeating them, but it wasn't clear at all. Now I have all the enemies figured out, but past me would have very much liked some direction. Speaking of Navi, there were a lot of times I brought up The Legend of Zelda and compared the two. I think the two share some similarities, or maybe Alice drew some inspiration from Zelda. I mean, in both you do a lot of exploring, there's lock-on, the roses are like hearts, you can find what are essentially 4 heart pieces to increase your health with radula rooms. Do you think so, or am I just crazy? By the way, the hidden collectibles. You can't have a AAA title without hidden collectibles, can you? You know, those things that are lazily hidden around the game in an attempt to add content and gameplay hours? No, don't worry. Unlike other games, I find the hidden collectibles worth finding. There are pig snouts, radula rooms, memories, and bottles to be on the lookout for. You can hear a pig snout when they're nearby, and when you do find it, you shoot at it with the pepper grinder to make it sneeze, and voila, it reveals some kind of secret. Radula rooms are rooms that are tucked away in places where unobservant eyes will pass them by, but if you find them, you will face some kind of challenge, and if you complete it, you will be rewarded with a rose piece. Some of them are just kill all the enemies, some of them take the more unique parts of the game and makes a challenge out of it, and some of them are riddles.
Here's a tiny brain teaser for a tiny, well, for you. What comes next in the sequence? 1, 3, 4, 7, 11.
What? I didn't expect to do any math while playing a video game. I haven't taken a math class since high school. I didn't study, I'm not ready. Mom, help me! I solved it. And it didn't even take me 5 long minutes of staring at the screen until I figured it out. And I definitely didn't edit it out so that people on the internet wouldn't make fun of me. And some of them are not very good. Sometimes the challenge is just to survive for a certain period of time. It's little details like this that keep me from giving this game a perfect score. All you have to do here is run in circles around the map and they will never catch up to you. The thing I like the most about the radula rooms though is that each time you complete a radula room, you are sent to this garden area where you pick up the rose piece, and this area just might be the most beautiful of them all. It's at night, it's got floating jacks and dominoes and bubbles and giant creeper snails, great music, and to top it all off, an amazing statue as the centerpiece. Memories play back one of Alice's memories, which give insights on all the characters, the world she lives in, and provides clues on what's going on in the story. Unfortunately, a lot of them just seem like random quotes that don't have to do with anything or have characters just repeat what they already said in another memory with a different wording. But they're always fun to find as they add to the dark atmosphere of the game.
The railway running through Wonderland sounds charming, but inefficient. Noise and smoke, like snips and snails, perhaps. Best to forget that train. A mock turtle as conductor? Oh no, I don't think that will do at all.
There are also bottles which unfortunately don't give an immediate effect. The bottles unlock information about the characters and enemies in the game, so you have to go back to the main menu to see them. When you find all the bottles in the level, you will unlock the concept art for that level, and the concept art is so fucking good! It really motivates me to find all the bottles because I want to see all the concept art. Imagine all the wonderful creative artists that have to work on this game. Every studio has a share of artists, but with this game in particular, I feel like there would have to have been way more. And like, not just concept artists and 3D modelers and stuff like that, but like artists. Because when I look at the concept art, it looks like something that belongs in a museum. I go back and forth about the difficulty of this game a lot. Nightmare difficulty can be freaking brutal. This game is really stingy with those roses, and every hit takes a huge amount of health, so you can't afford to make mistakes. But it seems that all that it really takes is knowing each enemy really well so that you know when to block or dodge to succeed. But even when you know all those things, it can be really hard to keep track of all those attack patterns when there's a whole bunch of different kinds of enemies attacking you at once. But once you get the teapot cannon, things get easier because the teapot cannon is pretty overpowered. I sort of sometimes feel that the difficulty isn't like a good challenging difficulty, but instead of frustrating, this isn't really fair difficulty. But that could be because I'm not good at multitasking and therefore can't keep track of all those different enemies at once. But I feel like the enemies weren't designed with other enemies in mind. I think maybe the enemies were designed to interact within a horde of the same kind of enemy, because that's when they seem to work together well. When it puts a bunch of different kinds of enemies together, they don't feel like a cohesive unit. It's not like in Halo with the hierarchy of grunts at the bottom, then jackals, then brutes, and then the specialized enemies like the drones and the hunters that all work together and feed off of each other and just come together like a puzzle. Instead, it feels like a hodgepodge, a mess happening all at once. I especially hate the ice narcs and the flying enemies that shoot at you while you're trying to deal with a million different things. But maybe it's because I'm not taking full advantage of my arsenal, like the clockwork bomb, which distracts and stuns enemies, which I always seem to forget about. Also, this brings up another issue, the lock-on. If there's not a lot of enemies, then it's fine. When there is a lot of enemies, it's really hard to lock onto the enemy that you want, especially when you're playing with a keyboard and mouse, because the control to change the target is not a stick on a controller that lets you choose the direction that you look in, but instead a single key that does not give you any choice or control and tries to focus on the thing that is closest to you, but doesn't always work. Also, for some reason, when you lock on, the camera doesn't stay fixed. In every other game that I've played, when you lock on, the enemy always stays in the middle of the screen and you're either in the bottom right or left corner, and you can always understand where the two are in relation to each other. In Alice, both the enemy and Alice have the freedom to move around on the screen, which can lead to problematic camera angles where either the enemies, like the very one you're locked onto, or walls block your sight, which forces you to unlock on, get your bearings, relock on, and then continue fighting. Each chapter takes place in a different environment, and along with the recurrent rune enemies, have a new set of enemies that are specific to that level. The first chapter, The Hatter's Domain, might be my favorite. I really like the aesthetic of it. It's very metallic and black and clanky, where there's giant buildings floating in a green skyscape, and Alice is wearing that gothic looking dress. By the way, it might seem like a weird thing to say that Alice's dresses are an important part of the game, but they just are. Each dress looks so cool and looks so unique and fits so well with the specific level. It's just awesome. Anyway, the first chapter is where my favorite character, the Mad Hatter, is. He's probably the most interesting character to listen to.
I feel like a new man, or whatever I am. I feel like an unsprung spring, like an uncorroded gear, like an untarnished bit of metal that sticks in your eye.
Answer me, Hatter. I'm suffering, and changes here are a cause, or they're a reflection, or the effect. What's going on? What are the new rules?
The law is just a whisper away, away home to wonder who knows how to measure rules with a ruler. Cruel rules.
All the characters in this game are batshit crazy and have their own motivations. They don't give a shit about what's going on in the world around them and only care about their tea parties and plays, things that only matter to them and their crazy version of reality. You spend a portion of the first level looking for the rest of his body parts. This is where you start to notice that the game suffers from the 3-step conundrum solution. That's a word I made up to describe something that is very common in games. Basically, there's an obstacle blocking you from completing your goal. In this case, I had to retrieve the Mad Hatter's body parts, but in order to do that, I need to go to 2 different places to get them. This particular example doesn't have 3, but you know which one does. My least favorite part in the whole game. You have to go into these 3 areas to kill these drowned sailors, which by the way are the worst enemy in the game because they look stupid, they sound stupid, they have stupid attacks, and they turn invisible, and when they turn invisible they become invulnerable, and you have to wait for them to get out of their invulnerable, invisible state to attack you for them to become vulnerable again, which takes freaking forever, and then when they do it, their attacks are really hard to avoid because you have to time it in a really weird way, and then when they become stunned there's hardly enough time to do any damage to them, and I really fucking hate these enemies! Anyway, you go to this section where you have to follow a glowing seahorse to a chest that you need to break to liberate their souls. If you get too far behind or ahead of the seahorse and find yourself in the darkness, you'll quickly lose your health and die. Not like when you fall off a platform and then just start where you left off, but actually die, go back to a loading screen and fight the stupid drowned sailors again. Ugh, I just really hate this part. In this game, even though you feel like you're doing a lot, you almost don't get anywhere in the story until the end because Alice first goes to the Hatter for help, and then the Hatter tells her to go to Mock Turtle. Mock Turtle tells her to go to Carpenter. Carpenter tells her to go to Caterpillar. Caterpillar, who's the only one who starts to know what's going on and what Alice needs to do, tells her to go to the Queen, and the Queen finally takes her to where you're supposed to be. Bitch! Just tell me where I need to go from the beginning. Why drag the game on and on? I don't know why games do this. I already have all these obstacles in my path. Why do you have to make sub-obstacles blocking me from solving the main obstacle that I already have? Why do AAA game developers feel that the longer a game is, the better? Don't they understand that a game can be too long as well as too short? Especially when they don't add anything new throughout the entire game. Again, I'm not saying that the gameplay in this game is bad, it's just that it's the same mechanics for the whole game, which is why I really would have liked some unique moments in each level where they change up the gameplay. For example, there's a part after you rebuild the Mad Hatter where you kinda team up, and I really wish they would have done something more creative with this. When he puts you on his back and starts jumping like the freaking Hulk, I thought that was so cool and I thought I was gonna be able to control him, but I was disappointed. I wish that in each level they would have done something really unique, like in Queensland when you turn into
Mega Alice.
The point is, it was a super epic and memorable moment. They took the gameplay that was already there and put a twist on it. In other games, this would be like the vehicle sections in Gears of War, or like that time in God of War 2 when you got to ride the Pegasus. You know, things that change up the gameplay. I feel like they attempted to do that with the little mini-game things, but they're not really good. Why am I in a boat shooting sharks all of a sudden? Why am I controlling a baby head like if it was a pinball? Why am I singing along to music with a bottle fish that can't sing? They just seem like random additions that don't really need to be there. I'd rather they use the time they used to create these things to create more moments like this.
Silly mortals, you cannot foul the light of Mega Alice. Destruction is fun.
There's no bosses in this game other than the final boss, which is a shame. At the end of the first chapter, it looks like you're going to fight this epic boss, but then it's anticlimactically destroyed by the Mad Hatter. When you only have 1 rose left, you can enter Hysteria mode, which makes you invulnerable and deal more damage to enemies. Aside from looking really cool, what I like about it is that it's not like in other games where you build it up by killing enemies, and then you don't seem to find a good opportunity to use it. When you get the chance to use Hysteria, it's not because you're doing good in the game, it's because you're doing bad. You feel like a cornered animal that's at the brink of death. So you tap into your insanity to kill them and hope that when you come to, you kill them all, or else you're screwed. The only thing I wish is that either A, it lasted longer, B, you do more damage when you use it, or C, enemies shouldn't be able to block your attack. Because sometimes it feels like complete bull when you're in this state that's supposed to be overpowered, but you have to wait for the enemy to become vulnerable for you to actually do anything with that power. And you feel like you can't do enough damage in the amount of time that they give you, which is important because when you go back to normal, you'll only have 1 rose. That's the thing about this game. Waiting. Some enemies are worse than others, but a lot of them require you to wait for them to do something to leave themselves open for you to attack them. The kinds of enemies that I like are the ones that do these kinds of actions often and also give you the choice of not waiting for them and just using the hobby horse to break their defense. The enemies I don't like are the ones that take way too fucking long to do anything and you can't do anything about it and you just have to wait for the bullshit to kill them. Anyway, the first time I played most of these levels, I felt like they were really out of place for something that was supposed to be in Alice in Wonderland. The ice level, the water level, the Asian level, doll level. None of these things happen in Alice in Wonderland as far as I know, but as I played the game more and more, I came to accept them for the beautiful environments that they were. The Asian level, even though I felt like it was out of place, I liked off the bat more because I'm a nerd and I like Japanese things, and I really like the aesthetic. And look at Alice's dress. It looks like a kimono, it's awesome. I like the statues, the origami ants who have funny voices. What's probably my favorite part of the whole game is in this level. You walk into this painting and become part of the painting. The art style, the music, the surreal atmosphere of this place is just awesome, and to me, it's the artsiness of the game at its peak. It's so trippy. I wish they did more unique things like this. There are so many small details in this game that make it so mysterious. The drawings on the wall, those weird symbols on Alice's clothes that also appear when you attack enemies. You don't know how much time passes each time you slip into a psychotic episode and enter Wonderland, or what she did during that time. The part that confused me the most was when she entered Wonderland when she was on top of Pris's roof, and then when she snaps out of it, she's being fished out of a river. Like, what? How did you go from here to here? I guess each hallucination takes a different amount of time, since in one she gets knocked out in a burning building, and then when she comes to, she's in a cart right after the event with the building still burning. I guess during the time of the first hallucination, a lot of time passed by, and at one point she was being crazy near a river and fell in. Also, there are several times when you can see things from Wonderland appear in what is supposed to be the real world, which makes me wonder if anything that Alice is seeing and going through is actually even happening at all, especially with the ending. But we'll get to the ending later. The final boss is not very good. Now, if I reveal the identity of the final boss, that would be a huge spoiler. Instead of fighting the boss directly, you just fight his or her hands, which don't have good attacks, some of which are really hard to avoid and overall aren't fun to fight. And you spawn enemies while you're fighting the final boss, which is something that I hate in any game. I'm trying to fight this guy who's supposed to be an epic confrontation. Why would you throw these annoying little enemies at me? They just distract from the real matter that's at hand. And when you do attack the boss directly, you don't hit his or her body, just the tongue. And then the fight's over before you know it. It's really anticlimactic. And for some fucking reason, the amount of health that you had right before the boss carries over into the fight. It's the final boss, people. You didn't think to refill my health? I guess in the end the villain got what he or she deserved, but it's done in such an unsatisfying way. But the fact that the ending is so open-ended makes it better because it could mean that none of that was actually real. Which, by the way, really bothers me when people say that it was all just a dream ending is bullcrap. Like, who cares if it's all a dream? Like, it's the journey of being there. Like, you watch a movie, it takes you on a journey. It teaches you life lessons. You know, everything about it was good, and then the ending turns out to be a dream. That doesn't mean that all of those things that you experience all of a sudden don't mean anything. Like, I don't know. I don't get people's logic. Anyway, back to the video.
Every picture tells a story. Sometimes we don't like the ending. Sometimes we don't understand it.
This game can be really disturbing and disgusting. I mean, just look at this. Holy crap. In this part of the game, you can only advance by doing drugs? I really like Queensland. The opening of this level has you standing on giant cards floating in the clouds. The music is amazing, it's calm and serene. The graphics look really good here, and that's a funny thing to say because there's actually hardly anything here. It's all sky, clouds, and cards. It's very minimalistic, and I like it. As you walk around, cards appear before you, providing platforms to stand on. I think that the reason why I really like this part is because it's such a big contrast to the rest of the game, and I really wish that they did more things like this. The part after this is really cool, and this is where Alice is wearing what I think is the best looking dress. In this level, there's an enemy called the Executioner, who is a giant card guard who can't be killed. I kind of like this guy, but the thing is, I felt like they wanted to make him this really scary, intimidating enemy, and you know, the only thing that you can do is run away when he appears, and he doesn't leave you alone for like half the level, but it's really easy to get away from him. They have these hallway segments where you have to run away from him, but all you have to do is mash shift over and over, so I don't know why they put these segments here. I broke the queen's heart. Literally. Alice is pretty freaking brutal. After this level, when you go back to the real world, you find that Alice landed herself back in the insane asylum, and this part of the game is awesome. Just never a boring moment in this place, and it's where the real world and Wonderland really start to blend in and make for some trippy experiences.
I know.
Which way's up and which way's down?
I was gonna say,
No prayers.
don't interrupt. If I can't...
Go to the lavatory.
Maddening.
Yes, you are. But what am I?
I'll give you...
A present? You shouldn't. I've nothing for you. I defer to your enormous arse, your worship. Just a coxcomb, a catacomb, a three-lipped feline.
What cat? Where? Is the fox among the pigeons? Sly devil.
Moved out of the hen house then? What?
Then you enter the doll level, which is really cool because you walk around in these houses with giant furniture which makes you feel like a doll. The music is calm and creepy at the same time. Unfortunately, it has the whole pinball thing though. It's out of place, not particularly fun, and can be even rage-inducing at times. This level also has this area, which I like a lot. It houses some pretty great art and freaky scenery. A lot of times I can't understand what the characters are saying because the dialect is different, and on top of that, I'm not smart enough to figure out the subtly worded dialogue.
Time? The time has come to talk of ships and vegetables and royalty and whether pigs have wings and so on.
Enough of that, Walrus. You start wailing about there being too much sand on the beach, I'll have your blubber for breakfast.
What? Did I miss something? Royalty? Vegetables? What the fuck are you talking about? So here are the bad things about the game. Not all the enemies telegraph their attacks very well. This means that a lot of enemies give you absolutely no time to react, so you feel like it's unfair each time you're hit. And this game has its fair share of glitches. I don't like the fact that you can't jump when you're locked on and that you can only use the umbrella while you're locked on. The controls can be a little weird. You have to push R to switch between the hobby horse and the knife. I wish there was more variety in the enemies and that each enemy had their own unique ways of dealing with them. The freaking slithering ruin have no freaking business hiding in the breakable containers. They're freaking assholes. They just wait for you to come to the crates and go, hey look, crates! Perhaps they contain valuable resources like roses. As I am near death, allow me to look inside. Then you break them and then they freaking whack you in the face. And then you lose the rose that you just got. If you want to keep these enemies in normal combat situations, then okay. But definitely don't put them in these crates. It's not fun and it's unfair. It might have been just better not to include them in the game at all. As I said, I haven't played the first game, so if anyone can tell me a way that I can play the first game, please do. Preferably a legitimate way, and if not that, then a safe way. Let me tell you about a little experience I had while trying to look for the first game. I was doing some research on Alice Madness Returns when I realized that there was a prequel, so I set out to find how to play this game, and I realized that the monster that was EA no longer sold the game. My resolve strengthened as I realized that I had to download the game illegally. So I went to a website where they had the game, and I downloaded this thing that wasn't the game, but was supposed to help me download the game. I don't know, it was weird and complicated, and I probably shouldn't have downloaded it. Then, I closed my browser and opened my browser again, and when I opened it, it said that my computer was at risk and to not close the browser and to call the number on the screen. Part of me felt like if I closed the browser, everything would be fine, but another part of me wanted to make sure that nothing had happened. So I called the number, and they told me that my computer was being hacked by hackers in Russia, and I totally lost my shit. Then I told my dad about it, and he was all like, "You freaking dumbass, it's all a trick, turn off your computer right now." So that's what we did. Then we factory reset my computer in case they had put anything there. Yeah, I feel really stupid about it looking back. Not my greatest moment, but I still really want to play this game. So if any of you guys have suggestions, that'd be really good. Maybe, I don't know, I've seen sales on like eBay or Amazon or something, but the copies seem really expensive, you know, because you know they don't sell them anymore, and you know, I don't know. Anyways guys, thanks for watching the video. I also have a Let's Play of this game coming up soon, so if you like this video, subscribe so that you can see all the stuff that wasn't able to make it into this 30-minute video. I talk about a lot of things, including some pro strats. Remember to use the links in the description to find me on social media and to read my short stories on Smashwords. Alrighty guys, I'll see you later. Until next time.